Hi everyone, this is Rayon Paper. It is time for another currently inked fountain pens video. Last month I decided to theme my pens around the theme of autumn in Paris, and for this month I thought it would be fun to do another sort of themed collection of fountain pen inks, specifically the inks. The pens I chose because they matched well with the inks, I think. But I picked the inks first, and what I wanted to do was pick 6 inks that all have something related to spookiness in their name. Sometimes it's a little far-fetched, maybe, but I still wanted to make a nice color palette, so I'll let you be the judge of whether I succeeded or not. I have 6 pens today, the first one being this Sailor 1911 Prophet Junior in light gray, and I've inked it up with Diamine Ghost. So Diamine Ghost is a light gray ink from I think it was the red ink fan calendar of 2021. Take that with a grain of salt, but it's definitely an ink fan ink. And I figured Ghost sounds pretty Halloweeny, spooky to me. So I'm just using my speedball nib in a very basic, cheap holder to swatch these inks. Diamine Ghost is a pretty light ink. It's a gray that is slightly more on the cooler side, with some hints of blue almost. And I just think it's a lovely color. Maybe I should write down the name first and then swatch the color, because now I have to write weirdly. Anyway, so this is the Sailor 1911 Prophet Junior in light gray with the medium fine nib with Diamine Ghost. Since it's already the 14th of October, I've been writing with these pens for a little bit already. So what I can tell you about this one is that it writes lovely. It is not too dry, definitely not too dry, but it's not really a wet writing ink or pen either. So it writes quite, it makes very clear lines. It's very fine, very precise, if you will. And I really enjoy writing with this one. Then for the second pen and ink, I picked this ink, Narwhal or Navalur. I think it's actually pronounced Narwhal according to their website. And it's from the Explorer series, and the ink is called Dark Forest. I think that the color swatch that you get on the bottle is actually not representative of the ink at all. It's way cooler. It's quite olivey and warm on this label, but it's a very cool dark green, almost a bit grayish. And I figured Dark Forest sounds pretty spooky to me. And I've inked this up in this Jinhao 82 in the deep sea green. And I specifically picked this pen because I had troubles with it last year, and I wanted to try if I could fix it. The problem that I had is that it wrote extremely dry, even with like a wetter ink. So I figured that maybe the tines of the nib were just too narrow, too tight, and I carefully pushed down on the nib and tried to sort of spread the tines a bit further. I'd never done that before, but I figured if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it with one of the cheapest pens I have. And it actually worked really, really well, and it writes so much better now. So yeah, I'm glad I didn't ruin the pen and that I can actually enjoy it now. So yeah, that is the Narwhal Dark Forest in the Jinhao 82 Deep Sea Green with an extra fine nib. And then after 2 bottles, I have 4 samples inked up in pens. And the first one is in this LAMY All-Star in black purple, which is sort of this aubergine kind of color. It's really nice. It's very shiny. And in that, I put Diamine Writer's Blood. I think anything with blood in the name, honestly, is a great candidate for a spooky ink. And I'll tell you right now that this has an extra fine nib, but LAMY nibs are quite wet. And then we have the Diamine Writer's Blood, which is a really wet ink. And this combination, it feels great on the paper, but it's a little too wet for me, honestly. And I think this illustrates very well how just a term like extra fine, fine, medium fine will tell you almost nothing about the writing experience that you're going to get. It depends so much on the brand that made the nib. It depends so much on the ink that you put into the pen. And I think that writer's blood is a very interesting color. It's somewhere between a red, like a Bordeaux wine red, and a purple. And it really depends sort of on the light and on the paper, whether I think it's more red or more purple. But honestly, it's just really in between. And I think that's a really cool shade. And it looks very nice. So that is the Diamine Writer's Blood in the LAMY All-Star Black Purple. Then for the next ink, I picked a Sailor ink. And that one is called Kasasagi from the Shikiori ink line. And Kasasagi means magpie. And whether a magpie is something that fits into the spooky category depends a lot on where you are from, I think. I think in Asia, they are actually like really associated with good luck and good fortune and just generally very positive things. Whereas in, like I know that in the UK, for example, they are sometimes seen as bringers of bad luck, especially if you see just like one magpie. You're supposed to greet it, because otherwise you'll have bad luck. So it's at least it's a bird that has some interesting things going on folklore-wise, and it's also part of the corvid family of birds, and I think those are often associated with spooky season. And I put that in a sailor pen as well, and that is the Lécoule in blue and ruthenium. It's an extremely dark blue. It on camera it probably looks pretty black, with the ruthenium trim, and it has a medium fine nib. So compared to the Sailor 1911 Prophet Junior, I think these can have a very similar writing experience. They have, I think it's actually just the same nib, just with a different color, as this one is like more a grayish sort of silvery color, and this one is darker, like ruthenium colored. But I think they write pretty similarly. So the difference, especially the difference in line width, is mostly because of the ink, with the Kasasagi, Sailor Kasasagi being a bit more wet than Diamine Ghost. So in terms of the ink color, Kasasagi is a very, very dark blue that honestly in writing and in a swatch look very black. It starts to look a bit more blue, especially like a grayish blue, sort of unsaturated blue when it dries down. But overall, it's just a really dark ink, which fits the theme pretty well, I think. And then we have two shimmer inks, with the first one being in this Jinhao 95 in the black colorway. It's a very cool pen. It's like literally as well, because it is cool to the touch, seeing as how this is a metal pen. It's a bit heavier, but not too heavy since it's very slim. I think this is a lovely pen, and I used to have some issues with the nib being scratchy, but I've written some figure eights on a bit of micro mesh with this nib, and that seems to have solved it pretty well. So it writes just fine now. So let's just agitate it a bit. And the ink that I decided to put in this pen is Diamine and Night Sky. Yeah, I think Night Sky sounds spooky enough, depending on whatever is out there at night. And that is a, I think it's a blackish, slightly blue-leaning ink. I'm actually not quite sure. We'll see in the swatch. It's one of those inks that, because it has a silver shimmer, it's a bit harder to see what is actually going on underneath. And Night Sky is one of the shimmer inks from Diamine that is not from an Inkvent calendar, but from the Shimmertastic line. And I think it's from a couple years back, so it's been around for a while. I've almost run out of this sample. There's not much left. Maybe enough for like one small filling, maybe not an entire converter. But it's one of those inks that was fun to try, but I probably would not really see myself using a whole bottle of this. you can't really see the shimmer all that well yet. Maybe when it's dried. So we'll just give that a bit. And then the last ink is not really that spooky, technically, but I still think it fits the sort of Halloween vibe pretty well. And that is Ferris Wheel Press Hearty Harvest. So Hearty Harvest is a orange ink with a reddish orange shimmer. It's very warm, which I think is a very nice addition to this otherwise pretty cool looking color palette. But I think it just fits that whole pumpkin vibe really well, especially in the Hearty Harvest pen, which like these two go together. And to be honest, I'm not really sure how much I like this. The pen writes well, but it just looks and feels very, very cheap, very plasticky. And the ink is really pretty, but not really, it's not my favorite orange. I do think the red orange shimmer looks pretty cool, but I don't know. It's nice. It's one of those combinations that's just really nice to try for once, but I'm not sure whether I would ink these two up again. And the Ferris Wheel Press Hearty Harvest pen. Oh, I actually forgot to add the Carousel. That's not going to fit, is it? Oh well, no big deal. The model is called the Carousel, and it has a fine nib. So yeah, I think that in the writing samples, you can actually see the shimmer a bit better than in the swatch for now. Especially the shimmer in the Hearty Harvest, I do have to admit that it looks really pretty. So yeah, maybe I'll take it back. Maybe I would like to ink that ink up again, but maybe in another pen. One that looks a bit, I don't know, more deserving of a shimmer than this fairly plain looking Hearty Harvest pen, if that makes sense. So these are the pen and inks that I have inked up for this month. 6 this month. I think last month I did 7, which was quite a lot. 6 will be a bit easier to write dry. And yeah. I'm curious to hear if for October you picked a theme for your pens or you just inked up whatever you were feeling this month. I think that's what I'll do next month. For next month, I have just started making a list of pen and inks that I want to try that do not really make for a specific color palette, but I've just been really wanting to try them. But I think for October, a spooky fountain pen theme is just a really cool idea. Yeah, I hope you liked this video. If you did, feel free to give the video a like or maybe subscribe and stick around for a while. And I hope you have a great day. Take care. Bye.